Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and much like with South Park's 21st season's first episode, I have some pretty strong feelings about the second episode in the season. And those feelings, for the first time in a long time with South Park, are positive. For the most part, I think this is a really good episode. Though there are many differences between this episode, Put It Down, and last episode, White People Renovating Houses, structurally the two episodes are nearly identical. There's two plots in each, one of which stars Cartman, and the other stars a character that isn't one of the main five boys. In this case, Tweek. Also, once again, Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Butters get to do pretty much nothing. But more on that a bit later. So, unlike Randy, who has become a pretty much de facto main character of the show, Tweek is a character who has gotten focus in the past, but does not appear or take focus nearly as much as Randy. Therefore, I think he makes a much more interesting central character, just because he's someone we don't get to see as much, but yet he is also an established character in the show. And this storyline very much makes sense for him. So Tweek spends the entire episode freaking out about things going on in Korea, as well as the president's reactions to things going on in Korea. So Craig, being Tweek's boyfriend, is tasked with the challenge of trying to calm him down and help him see that things aren't quite as bad as they seem. Okay, so here's where I talk about real life politics for just a moment, and only as much as I need to in order to discuss this episode. So after Trump was elected, a lot of people had what could only be described as a social media tantrum. I don't mean the people who are talking about his flaws as a president and the flaws with his policies. I mean the people freaking out, saying the world is ending, saying all the progressive things that people have fought for is about to be completely overridden, and carrying on like this for months. Seriously, there are people who spend so much of their time and lives tweeting about Donald Trump. I mean, look, I get it. He is the president, and so it is important the things he does, and of course he's going to be on everybody's minds. But after you've vented for months about your problems with this guy and how bad things are going to apparently be, maybe you should just calm down and realize that no matter how bad of a president you think Donald Trump is, the world is not going to plunge into apocalypse, and 4 or 8 years later, we are going to have another leader. I'm not saying shut up and just don't be concerned if you're bothered by Trump's actions. But I think a lot of people should realize that their constant moaning online really isn't doing anything. If you actually want to make a change, there are some real tangible things you can do to make your community a better place. And accept the fact that for most of us, that's pretty much the best we can do to change the world. There are global problems that really an individual person can't actually do much about. And getting addicted to looking up at every single news story and following every single little thing the president does that annoys you is kind of unhealthy and is not a good or productive way to live your life. I'm not saying ignore it outright, but definitely put down your phone from time to time. And basically what I'm saying is that I agree with the overall messages put forth in this episode. While yes, the episode preaches a pretty basic message that most people could figure out on their own, that is, put down your phone from time to time, especially while you're driving, and especially if you are the president, it still does a great job of covering the somewhat complex nuances of the fact that it is somewhat understandable that people are freaked out by the situation in Korea and the situation going on with our president enjoying running his mouth on Twitter. But dwelling on these things and obsessing over them is surely going to ruin your life and not be productive in the long run. And I think that's a pretty important message. And I like how the episode juxtaposes Tweek's freaking out with the group of kids that are trying to raise awareness against texting while driving. In that while Tweek, for the most part, is only freaking out and not actually doing anything productive until Craig suggests that he bakes something for the Koreans, these kids have actually put together an organization and are trying to spread awareness and are holding rallies and are responding in a concerned yet rational way. And ultimately, the major conflict of the episode is resolved when both Tweek and Craig just sit down and discuss what's been going on. Because maybe, just maybe, if all of these people on social media throwing these temper tantrums would just sit down in real life with an actual human being and discuss what's been going on in the world and how that's making them feel, they wouldn't be making such big fools of themselves online. Oh, and just as an aside, even though I am making fun of the people who have been overreacting on social media, definitely our president's Twitter is absolutely hands down the most embarrassing Twitter account to ever exist. Also, this episode has fidget spinners. In fact, the promo released before the episode came out featured Tweek using fidget spinners in a way that made it seem like the episode might have actually been about them. And heck, for all I know, maybe it was going to be about them, but thankfully it isn't, because the fidget spinner craze has already kind of died. So luckily it is just a few jokes about how characters are forcing these things on Tweek in a desperate attempt to calm him down. Okay, now let's talk about Cartman's story. Basically, Cartman feels like he's not getting enough attention, so he keeps telling people that he's going to kill himself, even though obviously he has no intention of doing so. While this is a very Cartman thing of him to do, and is certainly not a bad story, I really don't think it does a great job of standing out. We've seen Cartman do very similar stunts before, like pretending that he's trans in order to get a special bathroom. But to be fair, this part of the episode is really only a small part of it. And it does have Cartman's wonderful cheesy song and rap about how Cartman shouldn't kill himself. Like I said, in general, I don't find this story to be bad, just not particularly stand out. Now for something that I consider incredibly important, how is the comedy in this episode? Definitely better than the first episode, though not fantastic. There are some good jokes in here, especially the one about Hillary Clinton taking the pledge to not be on her phone while presidenting, and the chorus of the song saying, "No one cares." In fact, that whole ending song and the whole ending conclusion about a subversion on texting while driving, and instead being about being on your phone while presidenting, is really funny, and a wonderfully silly extreme conclusion for South Park to reach. This is the sort of thing that the show does really well. Other funny things include just how blunt the president's tweets are, and Tweek's spastic song at the very beginning about the Koreans. So yeah, in general, this is a pretty good episode. But now let's talk about the bad things. First and foremost, there is the fact that Heidi is still dating Cartman, despite the fact that the previous episode made such a big fanfare of Cartman breaking up with her, and the fact that the creators and one of the episode's titles itself claims that it doesn't really want to do anything with serialization. We're 2 episodes in, and both episodes have had a plot that have included Cartman dating this girl. I'm fine with South Park having little recurring things in the background with continuity, but considering this character and this relationship is a remnant of that whole long last season story arc, the fact that it is still going on is definitely dragging it out, and really kind of makes me wonder if the creators did learn their lesson about serialization in South Park. Their relationship in this episode really isn't bad, but it does make last episode seem even more pointless, and it doesn't really add much to this episode. In fact, if Heidi wasn't in this episode, maybe we could have actually seen more of Butters. Remember when Butters was Cartman's sidekick that always appeared in episodes that starred him? I could definitely picture Butters being the only character on the show that's actually concerned that Cartman's actually gonna kill himself. Additionally, Heidi's role at the end of the episode to call out Cartman for the bad things he's been doing, well, we already have Wendy Testaberger to do that. Why do we need Heidi here still? And there's nothing wrong with keeping the character around and still giving her stuff to do, but I'm especially irked at the fact that they undid the last episode's ending by having them get back together. Especially because this means that there is going to have to be another episode in which they actually break up, which means it's going to be a story arc, I guess. Either that or it's going to be weirdly dropped, and after they specifically made it a point to bring back this character from last season and give her and Cartman's relationship some form of closure, it would be really weird to just drop the plotline now, when dropping it after last season would have just made so much more sense. Another issue I have with this episode, and it's just a small one, but why is it that we don't actually get to see Kenny die? He does appear at the end in the in memoriam section of the kids that have died, but that is so much less satisfying than actually seeing him get run over by a car or have some other horrific thing happen to him. Considering it's been a while since he's actually died, it would have been cathartic and nice to actually see it happen, but I do have to say I am glad that they actually did remember and did at least include his picture at the end. But yeah, aside from Heidi just randomly being back in a relationship with Cartman after last episode seemed to not even give the slightest hint that this was going to be a two-parter or something that's ongoing, my only other issue is the lack of the main characters, which is all the more prevalent considering last season they kind of got ignored as well in favor of characters like Mr. Garrison and Kyle's dad. I mean, this is 2 episodes in a row where Kyle, Stan, and Butters' main contributions are that they're standing around laughing in crowd scenes. Basically, they've done about as much as Token and Jimmy. So what did you guys think of this episode of South Park? And would you like to see me continue reviewing episodes in this season? Leave a comment letting me know. With that, PIEGUYRULZ, out.